Hello everyone, it's Dima here, and today I want to touch on a very interesting and complex topic, how tourism affects the religious life of Bali. During our 4 years of living on the island, Nastya, our twin daughters Liana and Taya, and I have witnessed how traditional Balinese religion interacts with the flow of tourists coming from all over the world. And you know, it's not just a black and white picture. There are both bright and dark sides. Today, I'll share my observations, tell you what I've seen with my own eyes, and explain why this issue is so important for the future of Bali. To understand the impact of tourism on the island's religious life, let's first remember what Balinese religion is. As I've already talked about in previous videos, they practice a unique form of Hinduism here, Agama Hindu Dharma, which exists only on Bali and nowhere else in the world. This isn't just a religion in our conventional understanding. It's a way of life that permeates every aspect of daily Balinese existence. When we first moved to Bali from Thailand, where we lived for 4 years, I was amazed at how deeply religion is integrated into everyday life. Every day Balinese make offerings, Kanang Sari, every house has its own temple, people participate in countless ceremonies that can take up to 40% of their income. And they do all this not for tourists, but because this is how their ancestors have lived for millennia. And into this ancient system of beliefs and practices, mass tourism has invaded in recent decades. Just imagine, about 6-7 million tourists annually visit an island with a population of 4.3 million people. Many of these tourists come not just to lie on the beach, but specifically to touch the local culture and religion, so-called spiritual tourism. And this is where things get interesting. Let's start with the positive impact. I remember how a few years ago, Nastya, the girls and I went to a Galungan ceremony in a small village near Ubud. This wasn't a tourist area. Foreigners rarely visit there. We were standing aside watching the procession when an elderly Balinese man approached us and in broken English invited us to join. He explained the meaning of each element of the ceremony with such pride, showed us how to properly fold our hands for prayer, and explained the symbolism of the decorations. "We are happy that foreigners are interested in our culture," he said. "It helps us preserve our traditions. Young people see that our religion is valued throughout the world, and this makes them respect their ancestors' heritage more." And indeed, tourists' interest in Balinese religion has several positive aspects. First, there's the economic factor. Tourists pay to visit temples, buy ritual paraphernalia, and donate money for the restoration and maintenance of religious structures. These funds help keep temples in good condition and conduct large-scale ceremonies that would otherwise be an unbearable financial burden for local communities. Second, tourism helps preserve traditional crafts associated with religion. In Ubud, where our girls' Balu Kids Kindergarten is located, there's a street where handmade ritual offerings are sold. A couple of years ago, we met a family that has been in this craft for 5 generations. The head of the family told us that young people used to leave for the city to work in hotels, but now that tourists actively buy ritual items, many are returning to the family craft. Thus, tourism helps preserve traditional skills and knowledge. Third, international attention to Balinese culture creates a kind of protective mechanism. The Indonesian government, seeing the value that unique Balinese religion represents for world cultural heritage, grants the island special status and supports the preservation of local traditions. But there's also the flip side of the coin. And here I want to share some observations that may not be very pleasant, but need to be talked about. By the way, many of you ask about how to legally live on Bali for an extended period. Planning a trip or move to Bali? Let Visa Pro Indonesia, the island's top legal visa agency, handle it for you. With an office right in Ubud and some of the best prices on all types of visas, they've got you covered. Right now, the most popular option is the E33G visa, valid for 1 full year with no visa runs required. They're also a licensed consulting agency, helping you legally set up a business in Indonesia, with full support and ongoing consultations. Use our promo code for exclusive discounts on any visa or company registration. Link in the description. Getting back to our topic, let's talk about the negative aspects of tourism's impact on Bali's religious life. The first thing that catches the eye is the commercialization of religion. I remember how on one of our first days in Bali, Nastya, the girls and I went to Tanah Lot Temple, one of the most visited tourist places. At the entrance, they sold us mandatory sarongs at an inflated price. Inside the temple, they offered special blessings for additional money. And the exit was organized in such a way that the path led through a long row of souvenir shops. All this created the feeling of a religious Disneyland rather than a place of power and worship. Many temples have turned into tourist attractions, a Balinese friend told me when we were living in Sanur for about half a year. A real ceremony requires inner concentration. But how can you concentrate when crowds of tourists are clicking cameras and discussing your clothes? The second aspect is the distortion of religious practices to attract tourists. Some ceremonies are now conducted not according to the religious calendar, but according to the tourist schedule. Traditional dances with deep religious meaning have turned into shows for visitors. For example, the Kekak dance at Uluwatu Temple is now performed every evening as part of a tourist program, although originally it was a sacred ritual associated with trance states and communication with spirits. Once we took our family to such an adapted fire dance. Our twins Taya and Liana were delighted with the bright spectacle, but an elderly Balinese man sitting nearby quietly told me, "This is no longer a real dance. Before, the dancers really entered trance, but now they just pretend. They dance for tourists, not for gods." The third problem is the violation of the sacredness of places and rituals. Unfortunately, not all tourists treat local beliefs with respect. We have repeatedly seen visitors ignore dress code requirements in temples, touch sacred objects, and interfere with ceremonies for the sake of a good photo. There was a case when we were visiting Besaki Temple with our family, and a group of tourists literally wedged between worshippers for a group photo. The locals endured this intrusion with characteristic Balinese politeness, but their faces showed how unpleasant this situation was for them. The fourth aspect, which is rarely discussed, is the problem of spiritual gurus for tourists. In Ubud, where Liana and Taya's kindergarten is located, numerous self-proclaimed spiritual mentors have appeared in recent years, offering tourists an authentic spiritual experience for money. Most of them have a very superficial understanding of Balinese religion, but this doesn't prevent them from conducting healing ceremonies and purification rituals for credulous foreigners. This has nothing to do with our religion, a local Mangku, lower-level priest, once told me. Real Balinese religion isn't a service that can be bought. It's a way of life that requires deep understanding and respect for traditions. But tourists are often sold a fake, and this is very sad. The fifth point relates to the changing attitude of the younger generation of Balinese toward religion. On one hand, as I've already said, foreigners' attention makes young people respect their culture more. But on the other hand, constant contact with tourists and their way of life changes the perception of religion among young Balinese. We met a family whose son works as a guide in Ubud. He told us that many of his peers now treat religious duties formally, making offerings without inner understanding of their meaning, participating in ceremonies because it's necessary, not out of inner conviction. They see how tourists are interested in the external, visual side of their religion, and they themselves begin to perceive it as part of cultural heritage, not as a living faith. However, not everything is so straightforward. Balinese religion has proven remarkably resilient to external influences. Despite all the challenges that tourism has brought, the foundation of Balinese spirituality remains unchanged. In villages located away from tourist routes, religious life continues as before. Ceremonies are conducted the same way as centuries ago. People make offerings every day, maintain their temples, and observe religious prescriptions. Tourism has practically not affected these aspects of life. Moreover, the Balinese have found a way to adapt to the tourist flow without losing the essence of their religion. For example, many temples now have a division. Part of the temple is open to tourists, while part remains closed, accessible only to believers. This allows for preserving the sacredness of important places while satisfying visitors' interest. It's also noticeable that some Balinese have started actively talking about their religion, acting as cultural ambassadors. They conduct real, non-adapted ceremonies and invite tourists not just to observe, but to truly understand the meaning of what's happening. This creates a deeper and more respectful form of interaction between local culture and visitors. I still remember how Nastya, the girls, and I were invited to a Kuningan ceremony at our nanny's house in a traditional village. It wasn't a tourist show, but a real family event. They explained the meaning of each element, taught us how to pray properly, and told us about the meaning of offerings. It was an experience of a completely different level, deep, sincere, allowing us to truly touch Balinese spirituality. Interestingly, some aspects of Balinese religion have even been enriched through contact with foreigners. For example, in recent years, interest in environmental preservation has increased on the island, which fully corresponds to the principle of Trihita Karana, harmony between people, nature, and gods. Many Balinese say they realize the importance of this principle thanks to environmentally oriented tourists who drew their attention to problems of plastic pollution and depletion of natural resources. I often think about what future awaits Balinese religion in the era of global tourism. Will it be able to maintain its authenticity, or will it gradually turn into a tourist attraction? My experience of living on the island for 4 years suggests that the Balinese will find their way. Their religion has withstood the test of time, colonial oppression, political upheavals, and survived. I think it will cope with the challenges of tourism too. The Balinese are too deeply connected to their spiritual roots to allow them to disappear. And you know, I believe that the key to harmonious coexistence of tourism and religion lies in a conscious, respectful approach from visitors. If tourists treat Balinese religion not as an exotic show, but as a living spiritual practice worthy of respect, this will help preserve its authenticity. Nastya and I always try to explain to our daughters Liana and Taya why it's important to respect other people's beliefs. When we visit temples or observe ceremonies, we teach them to be attentive, not to interfere, and to follow local rules. And I hope that more and more tourists will adhere to the same approach. In the end, spiritual tourism can be not only a threat, but also an opportunity for intercultural dialogue, mutual enrichment, and deep understanding of each other. The Balinese can share their wisdom, their vision of harmony between humans, nature, and the divine. And visitors can bring new ideas and perspectives that will help Balinese culture adapt to the modern world without losing its essence. What do you think about this topic? Have you ever witnessed how tourism affects local traditions and beliefs? Share your experience in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and write what you'd like to hear about in future videos. Thank you for your attention, and see you next time.